everyone. My name is Kevin Higgins, and before we begin, I just want to say one thing. Now, originally, the podcast was called I Was In That, which is why I referred to it as I Was In That the last episode. However, I found that was actually kind of limiting the subjects that I could potentially talk about in the podcast, because if I just use I was in that, that kind of implies I'm just interviewing actors when I really want to interview possibly anyone: actors, writers, directors, crew members, anyone who worked on any of your favorite movies and TV shows. That's who I want to interview. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, the second thing I want to say is that last week we interviewed Naomi Grossman, aka Pepper from American Horror Story, about her experience working on Background in the movie, the teen classic, of course, She's All That. Well, we are going to continue that by interviewing another background actor named Noel Ramos, who has been in some of your favorite movies and TV shows. But we're going to interview him about a very interesting time he did 2 episodes of the hit TV show Madame Secretary back to back. Welcome to the show, Noel.
Thanks, Kevin. And it's pronounced Noel because I was born on Christmas Day.
Ah, okay. So I'll know that for the future. So tell so tell me, Noel, what got you started into doing background acting?
Okay, well, my history as a performer is long and complicated, so I'll try to boil it down. But many years ago, I was a DJ, a live event host, a spokesperson, a radio guy, a TV show host, and I got my start in performance back then. Cut to many years later, I got a chance to be in a feature film that filmed in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and they asked me to come on board as a background actor, but as happens in some cases, they liked me, so they bumped me up to a featured performer. They ended up asking me to film for 32 days straight. I ended up playing one of the main characters, even though I still didn't have any lines. I was one of 2 FBI agents in the entire movie, and they promised to give me a credit in the film. And our final scene was shot in New York City, and it was spectacular. So that I was hooked after that. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I continued to work on it. I started taking more acting classes and studying harder and trying to work my way up to speaking roles, which I have succeeded in doing. But background acting was an incredible way to get started, to get myself on set, and to get into large film productions.
Okay. Yeah, film and TV productions.
Right.
Yeah, I know that you've been in Ghostbusters 2016, The Greatest Showman, and what we're going to talk about today, Madame Secretary, because you had a very interesting experience on Madame Secretary, as you told me. Can you tell your story to the viewers?
Sure, Madam Secretary was an amazing show to work on for a number of reasons, but the most important reason is that it's what I call an actor's show.
Mm-hmm.
It's produced by the actors, it's directed by the actors. Morgan Freeman is involved, Eric Stoltz is involved, Tia Leone is one of the producers as well as the lead actor. It's just an incredible creative environment that's fueled by the fact that there's so many actors creatively involved in its production. So every time I was on set for that show, it was just an educational experience and a fun time. And there's so many stories I could tell about it, but one in particular that's really funny is we were filming a scene where we were playing outdoor cafe patrons, and I was teamed up with another actor who was to portray my wife, and they seated us at a table at this outdoor cafe. And as we do in those situations, we end up sitting and waiting a lot for them to get ready to shoot the scene. So we're sitting there quietly because you're not supposed to talk, and just kind of like, passing the time until it was ready, until the scene was ready to shoot. And all of a sudden, I noticed my partner's face just go almost blank. Her eyes widened, and she was staring at something just to my right. And so as you would, I quickly turned to my right to see what the heck she was looking at, and my nose bumped into Morgan Freeman's nose because he was sat down right next to me, and he was punking me. So he waited until I looked at him, and he had this huge smile on his face. And as soon as I looked at him and our noses bumped, he laughed like a crazy man and stood up and walked away. So I was like, that was one of the most, memorable moments I've ever had on set. I got pranked by Morgan Freeman, which was amazing. And during that episode, he also personally directed us in a scene, which is very rare for the, major director producer to directly interact with the background actors. It was just a fantastic day.
Mm-hmm. So how did he direct you? Like, what was his directing style like, and what did he direct you to do?
Well, it was a scene. The scene that he personally directed us in was an amazing shot at the United Nations, which that alone was incredible. That we got to be in that building. We were able to sit in those seats, those historic seats, where the delegates actually sit, and portray delegates to the United Nations. It was mind-boggling just being there. But then it was Morgan Freeman directing us in the scene, which was even more incredible. And essentially, he addressed the entire crew of background actors, which was large for that scene.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about what he wanted us to do in the scene. We were to be listening to Téa Leoni giving a speech, a momentous speech, her first presentation as Madam Secretary to the United Nations. So it was a historic moment. And he basically just described our physical actions, what he wanted us to do while we were listening to her, when we should applaud, and any kind of facial expressions he was looking for. Because it was a crowd shot, as they often are when they have a lot of background actors, you're not going to be seen very closely on screen. You're usually just a little, head in the crowd. So it's less important what you're doing, but they do want authenticity. So it's important that, you're in the character. Even though it's a background role, it's super important because you are part of the production. You are part of the finished product that ends up on TV or in the theaters.
There's always that thing amongst background actors where, like, not all background actors, of course, because everyone's an individual, but whenever, like, it seems like a celebrity is going to be on set, people do tend to get hyped. I remember, like, I was working on a movie with Al Pacino.
Mm.
And the other background actors were like so excited because they thought they might get to see him, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I forget the name of the movie. It was the one where he was playing the coach of that college football team. Who It was an HBO movie.
Gotcha.
Does that sound familiar, that movie?
No.
All right.
Was it Any Given Sunday, that one?
No. Oh, definitely not. I was like 7.
Oh,
So
okay.
when that came out. But anyway.
You are a youngster, Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyway, like, so was there sort of that like hype when Morgan Freeman and Téa Leoni were on set? Like,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There always is. That's one of the best parts about doing the job, is being able to be up close and personal and interact with these huge stars and see what they're like and how they work. Especially in my case, I'm a lifelong learner. So for me, every chance to get on set and learn by observing was just huge. And I've worked with so many big name stars and had the opportunity to watch them work. It's just been incredible. That to me is the number one biggest benefit of background acting. You are on set with these people. You're interacting with them and with the crew. You're right there watching everything happen, and you have a ringside seat to how films and television shows are produced and created. It's incredible. And not just the actors, but also the writers and all the crew members, the assistant directors, the directors, the cinematographers, the grips, the makeup people, the special effects wizards. It's amazing. So yeah, absolutely. And on that show, oh my God, so many big names. Taya Leone herself, Tim Daly, who I love. If you remember that, you're too young, but there was a show called Wings that he was in.
No, I've heard of Wings.
Yeah, I mean that was great show. Jeffrey Arend, who is not just an actor in the show, but he's also one of the directors of the show. So it's just like I said, it's a star-studded production crew. So yeah, always exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I remember also there was a movie I worked on the week of, and which is an Adam Sandler movie that went on Netflix, and like he and most of the other cast and crew, except for what, were like friendly. They were smiling. They were greeting the extras. They were
Oh yeah.
they were being very just like personable and just very nice towards everyone. There was one actor who was like, he took pictures, but like you could tell he didn't want to be there. I won't say his name.
He who shall not be mentioned.
What?
He who shall not be named.
Yeah. Let's just say he has a very high and screechy voice. But yeah, there was definitely that hype around that film too. So I noticed you were all speaking of working with celebrities, you were also in a movie called November Criminals with Chloe Grace Moretz
Right.
and Ansel Elgort.
Yeah.
And your character actually has a name.
Yep.
So was that background or under 5?
Oh, that's a great story because I was personally selected by the director to be in that role. The casting people gave the director a very short list of actors that they had narrowed down. They gave him our photos to look at, and he picked me. And he named me after one of the crew members. So I didn't get to speak, but I was in a very they have a buzzword for that in the industry. They call it featured background, which is kind of a joke because you don't get paid any extra, but you get featured, so you're up front and in the camera, so you're very visible. And I got to be in a scene with Ansel where I played a school security guard, so that was tons of fun.
All right, great. So back to Madam Secretary now. So you also mentioned working not just, with the actors, but with the crew as well.
Yeah.
And for another episode of Madame Secretary you had to work with the stunt crew. Can you tell that story?
Oh yeah, that's another really great example of why that show was so amazing. As I said, it was always interesting to watch not only the actors, but the crew. And in this case, they had specifically singled out certain background actors that they liked to be, again, featured background in a scene that was to be an outdoor riot. And they had shut down a street in New York and put up a whole bunch of signs designed to make it look like a street in Pakistan. So they reversed all the writing so that the vehicle would be a left-hand side vehicle by reversing the film footage. So when they filmed the scene, everything was mirrored, and then they flipped it for the TV show, and it looked like the car was a left-hand side steering car. It was just an incredible bit of movie magic. And in that scene, the actor who's playing the Pakistani official is to be dragged out of the car and beaten in the street by the rioting mob. And so they had a small group of stunt guys who were specifically going to play the actors the characters who pull him out. And they needed one more person, and they chose me because when I showed up that day, I had a photograph of myself that I had taken before I left. And I showed it to the wardrobe person, and she freaked out and said, "Who is that?" She didn't recognize me. I
Mm-hmm.
said, that's me, because I had done myself up as a Pakistani. I had tied my own turban.
Mm-hmm.
I had done my makeup and my hair and my wardrobe. So she said, "Can are you prepared to look like that right now?" And I said, "Yeah, that's why I'm showing you this photo." And she said, "How long will it take you to make yourself up like that?" I said, "I could do it in 15 minutes tops." She
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Okay, go do it." So I went and I did my makeup, I put my turban on, I put on the wardrobe, and they let me work with the stunt people. And I'm in the scene where we pull him out of the car and we beat him in the street, and then we scream, "Hey!" because we succeeded in our revolt. And that whole scene was pivotal in that show. So it was so amazing to be involved in that and to work with the stunt guys.
Mm-hmm. For the viewers who may not know, how is it like working with stunt coordinators?
In that, well, I don't have a lot of experience with stunt work, especially on large productions like that.
Mm-hmm.
But because I was kind of an add-on to the scene, I wasn't, one of the actual stunt crew. It was hasty. In other words, they were all prepared for the scene. They had already rehearsed it. It involved smashing the glass of the vehicle, which was a specially designed car window that had been installed in the vehicle so it could brake safely. It involved pulling him out of the car, and he struggles, and so there was a couple of stunt guys involved in actually handling him. It involved dragging him onto this road and then creating a crowd around him that looked like we were beating on him without actually hurting the guy. So they coached me before the scene how to do these different things without any injury to the actor. And we spent, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes on that. It would have been much more prep time if I was an actual stunt crew member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet. In fact, I remember like another show I worked on, Show Me a Hero. We had to uh we did like this dance, but then we like had rehearsed it for like at least a half hour, I believe. I don't know, my memory's a little faulty on that, but then I remember like the sad for some reason we had to simplify the dance because for some reason, and I forget exactly why, uh we would all have had to have gotten like SAG waivers for
Right,
doing the dance we did. I don't really remember the specifics. I just remember kind of all of us kind of finding that to be a little weird,
yeah.
admittedly, but yeah, but that was kind of similar in that, we had to work with sort of a coordinator outside of the coordinator who usually deals with backgrounds.
Right.
But so now that we've talked about your experience on the show, it is time to talk about the show itself. So, before you got this job, were you a fan of Madame Secretary, or did you ever watch it?
No, to be honest with you, I had not seen the show yet, but I always research the shows that I get hired to work on. So
Hmm.
before I actually ended up on set, I did go and watch a bunch of the show, and I got seriously hooked on it. It is
Hmm.
so good. So I ended up watching a bunch of it and just fell in love with the show. It's incredibly well written and incredibly well produced. One of the best shows on TV, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. But how about your family? Were there any like family members of yours who had watched the show beforehand, or friends?
Yeah, some of my friends had watched the show and really liked it, and they
Hmm.
did mention it to me when I said, when I brought up I'm gonna be on Madam Secretary. I'm so excited because I like all the actors involved, and they said, "Oh, we watch that show too, and we really love it. It's got a very devoted fan base, and
Hmm.
especially because it is so well written and because
Hmm.
the cast is so incredible. It's a great ensemble cast."
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And also, just in general, like those network TV dramas do tend to have like a devoted following, like Law and Order, Persons of Interest, 911, uh, Designated Survivor, 24. So, like, that's why I was interested to know if, you knew anyone who was like sort of part of the Madame Secretary fandom.
Well, there's been a number of large productions I've been on, network TV productions like The Good Wife. I
Mm-hmm.
was involved with the entire series called Brain Dead, which lasted for a number of episodes, 12 episodes, I believe, and that was a lot of fun. I was on Quantico, so all of these shows are if they last more than one season, if they don't get canceled, that means that they've got good fan base built up, and
Mm-hmm.
they're almost always highly produced. That's how they get it on network TV in the first place. So another great example is a show I was involved with that I really loved working on, Blind Spot. If you've ever
Mm-hmm.
watched that show, I was involved in the entire first season of that show, and it was amazingly produced, very well produced show. Really enjoyed working on it. And another show that was a pleasure to be involved with because I got to observe so much of the production up close and personal. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. When they work, they develop a huge devoted fan base. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's true for shows of any genre.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get you get shows that are great, but then they get canceled, but then like people discover them in reruns and they come back. Like Futurama was like on for 4 years, which isn't bad, but then it was canceled, but people wanted more, so they brought it back like 4 years later, and then they canceled it like a few years after that, and now it's being brought back again.
You can't
Keep
keep a
ripping
good
it.
show down.
No, you can't.
There's a
And
show called Manifest that got picked up by Netflix because it was so popular. So that one is still on the air to this day because it was picked up and continued by Netflix. So that happens a lot too.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah, or you know what? Here's an example like of a show that was like started off on streaming and now is on cable TV, Tuca and Birdie. Like the first season was on Netflix, but it got canceled, but it had grown a fandom who wanted it back, so Adult Swim ended up picking it up. So you never know how a show is going to continue all the time. In fact, nothing about the entertainment industry is ever set in stone.
That is so true.
Hmm. In fact,
Especially with the pandemic, which threw a monkey wrench into production.
mhm,
Everything got thrown up into the air and became rather uncertain. And even just coming back from the pandemic has been kind of a touch and go situation. And we've never known at any point in time what was going to happen next. It's been very, uh, you know, difficult to gauge where we're going to be at any given point in time, how the production's going to cope with all of the different requirements needed for COVID, and how to get the production back on track. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah, actually, I worked on the show Raising Canaan recently. I was supposed to do background work for it in December, but then there was the whole Omicron variant spreading around then, and the shoot ended up happening like a month later because of that. Like, and I was thinking, like, is this even gonna happen? And if it's not, am I still gonna get paid? so so again, the entertainment industry, there's nothing set in stone. Like you can get like you can like pretty much any aspect. Like you could get like a bunch of jobs in a row and then nothing. You
Or
know,
you can do a really, really great scene that you think is amazing, and then they cut it, and you don't even end up in the show.
yeah, I know. I don't know if you've ever watched or heard of this movie UHF, but we're there was a have you seen that movie?
No.
All right. Well, it was a movie from the 80s. It was like it starred Weird Al. It was like his attempt to break out into movies.
Okay.
So he had this secretary character who was in a few scenes. She ended up being cut out of the movie, but she hadn't known until she went to the movie and brought her family and friends over.
To watch her scene and then it wasn't there.
Yeah, and he was like telling the story about how he felt so bad that she didn't know.
That even happens to big actors. Sometimes the movie needs to be cut down for time because they do these test screenings and they decide it's too long, we need to chop out 10-15 minutes, and they cut an entire actor out of the movie and remove their character from the film.
Mhm.
And it can happen to anyone, not just background actors. It
Yeah.
happens. One of the best scenes I was in for Ghostbusters got cut, and I was so upset because I got to interact with the Ecto in the scene and jump on the hood of the car, and I would have been in the
Mhm.
window, and you would have seen me screaming on the hood of the Ecto as it drove down the street, and Slimer was supposed to be driving it, and they cut the entire scene. So I was very upset about that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not just like you're right. It's like it could happen to anyone. It could happen to even character actors like there's nothing set in stone about how your career is going to go. Like you've seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right?
Oh my God, of course.
So you know about Grace, the secretary, right?
No, I don't. You tell me this story.
No, 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 no. It's not about Ferris, but you know who Grace's secretary is, the character.
In the movie.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
the righteous dude, that lady.
Okay.
Okay, so here's a fun fact that nobody knows about her, about another huge movie she was in, because no one would know she's in the movie. She's in Frozen. Grace the secretary from Ferris Bueller is in Frozen. You know why no one knows that?
No.
Because she has one quick line. We were worried sick. She went from like that iconic scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off to maid who says we were worried sick. If that's not a perfect metaphor for how just fickle the entertainment industry can be, like I don't know what is.
Well, then the reverse is also true. Sometimes when an actor has just a few words in the film, and yet it becomes an amazing, iconic part because
Mhm.
those few words are just magical.
Mhm. Like
Like
he's
in,
the righteous dude.
or in, when Harry met Sally, I'll have what she's having,
hmm
and that line made her famous.
Yeah, that's true. And that was Rob Reiner's mother.
It was, yes.
hmm So saying that, talking about how how just the entertainment industry in general doesn't really progress in a straight line, but rather in bits and spurts. You've told me that you've recently tried to stop background acting and start focusing more on principal acting and have actually gotten a few under five parts. Can you say a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been very fortunate to progress, as many actors do, because even though there's this like dirty little secret in the industry that, background actors are always background actors, that's just not true. So many of our famous big stars got their start
Mm-hmm.
as background actors. It's an incredibly good way to break into the industry, be working in the industry while
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to get bigger roles. And so I've been fortunate to be involved with some independent feature films and get an under five role, which they call a U5 for short. And that means you're just speaking a few lines, but it's a speaking role and it's amazing. I've played a police officer recently in a couple of different independent films. One is called I'm Not Him, and the other one is called Stroke of Luck, which is an incredibly funny movie, and it stars John Popper from Blues Traveler, and he plays, not surprisingly, a rock star, but he's very funny in the movie.
All right. Great. Now, are these films out or?
Yeah, um, they've both been released via Amazon Prime and other streaming platforms, and they're doing well.
All right, very good. So I think that's the end of the interview for today. So do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Not really. No, I just want to say thank you for this. I appreciate you having me on the show, and best wishes to you.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice for you to be on here. Anyway, I helped make that with our lovely guest, Noel Ramos, and we'll see you later.